So when we think of the Battle for Normandy, most people think of the 6th of June, the 101st Airborne, Pegasus Bridge and Omaha Beach. And then they stop looking beyond that. But the decisive battle in Normandy occurred in those fields and hedgerows here in the Falaise Gap. So from the 12th to the 21st of August 1944, the Allies would encircle the remnants of German Army Group B and crush them in and around what was to become known as the Falaise Pocket. In the south, you had the Americans and the French. Then coming in from the northwest was the British, then followed by the Canadians and the Poles. And all of them fought together to encircle the German army after their failed counterattack towards Mortain in early August 1944. Now, for this episode, I'm not focusing particularly on the Battle of Falaise and the Falaise Gap itself. It's just too big a subject. There's too many armies involved and there'd be too many stories. I would need to spend probably a year's worth of episodes trying to recount the story to do it any justice. But what we are going to do in this episode, I'm going to take you to some of the then and now locations that I've managed to find using original photographs, and we'll match those up with the terrain and see what remains of the action that took place here in August 1944. Behind me is probably one of the most famous locations from the Falaise Gap, from the battle of this whole region. That's the Dives River, and as you can see, it's not very big, it's not particularly wide, nor is it deep, but in August 1944, trying to cross the Dives was a major obstacle for the retreating German army. Now, you've got to remember at this point they were in absolute panic. All real command and control had been lost. It was just a case of move east, get to the Seine and get across the Seine River as quickly as possible and get out from the killing fields that were around Falaise, Argenton, Chambois and this whole area. So if you take a look, it's not very deep at all. I mean, I could wade in there probably up to my knees, but in August 1944 this really was the corridor of death. As the vehicles tried to ford here, a lot of them got stuck, and due to the insane artillery bombardment they were under from the Poles and the Canadians as they were coming down from the north to this location, past St. Lambert-sur-Dives, which we'll take a look at soon. But in the fields behind me, they were just littered, absolutely covered with German armour, German vehicles. Right, so for the next two then and nows I want to get from the ford here at Moissy, I'm going to struggle a little bit because these were taken by Allied reconnaissance. So they're aerial photos, but what I do know about the location is if we just go a little ways up here, hopefully we can see over the hedge because it is pretty tall, but fortunately I'm a little bit taller. And there, it was in this field here that they were photographing. Now the great marker that we've got is that building there, and we can clearly see it there in the bottom right of the image. It's somewhat looking worse for wear there, as well as all the other vehicles that are in that field, as well as some artillery pieces you can see in there. But it was this field, so we'll throw the drone up and we'll see if we can get the proper aerial then and now. Like a lot of Normandy, you can't escape the memorials. They're everywhere, and it's really nice to see that the local communities and people further afield, you know, have these memorials put in to pay respects either to massive engagements, whole divisions, or whether it be to individuals. And this one here is a memorial that I've not seen here at the ford at Moissy for a long time. I think it's probably, it's been nearly 10 years now since I last saw this. But I thought while we're filming here, it'd be nice to show you. And it's for two Mustangs, both from the 9th Air Force, from the 363rd Fighter Group that crashed here on the 13th of the 8th, 1944. Both pilots were tragically killed. It's a lovely memorial, and this was established here in 1996, so this is showing its age now a little bit, but great to see that it's still here. Right, so I'm now stood on the main road from Saint-Lambert-sur-Dives down to Chambois in that direction. But the reason I'm stood on this really fast road is there is the opportunity for a really good then and now. You've got the farm building there, the original buildings, and then there's that. It's a bit hard to do on the camera to get the perspective right, but the one with the little pointed roof with the flat side facing this way, and then as you go right, you've then got the big metal barn. Well, that's the wartime image, and you can see some of those buildings are still standing. Clearly a fair bit of remodeling was needed, but if you look at the photo, you can see the sheer amount of devastation with the what looks like Opel Blitz trucks and artillery pieces and Lord knows what else blown apart in the field right there. So when I pull the photo away, you'll be able to see that view as it is today. Right, so having just come from the ford at Moissy, I'm going to go to the village where essentially the Falaise Gap was closed with the action of the Canadian Army here. And there is this wonderful sort of memorial to what happened here. So it's memorial, but also information boards as well. Behind me there is the village of Saint-Lambert-sur-Dives, and it was here in August where Major Curry VC and his men of the Canadian Armoured Corps would take the surrender of the German army and essentially close the gap that had been created after the Germans failed counter-attack at Mortain. But there is one then and now from this location that I'm going to do before we go into the village and look at the then and nows that can be found there. Because the Falaise Gap involved a lot of German armour from Army Group B attempting to head east, a lot of it was knocked out. It was easy targets for the artillery. When the Allies came to clean up the battlefields, they had to put it somewhere, and one of the collecting fields that was used was just over the road here. We've got this great photo taken after the battle, and we can see there panthers, trucks, artillery pieces, all sorts. But if we look to the ridgeline at the very back of the photo, we can see that it measures up with that ridgeline all the way there in the far distance as it goes along left to right and then drops down into like a step before it drops down again. So at one time, all of those panthers and trucks were placed in that field right there. And I dread to think what happened to them after the war, because they would be worth many, many thousands of pounds, dollars, euros in today's currency. Right, so from this position, what we'll do then, we'll go down and we'll take a look at the then and nows that can be found in the village of Saint-Lambert-sur-Dives itself. It was here that the Canadian Army really made their mark, and we'll look at some of those photos in a minute, but I just wanted to have another look at some of the then and nows just before we get into the main part of the village. And there's this one here of this German army truck, and it has nosedived off of the embankment there, and then we can see the stream just gently flowing now. But incredible to think that this whole area here was a real scene of devastation 79 years ago. So just walking up into this quiet corner of Saint-Lambert-sur-Dives, and it really is, if you like the peace and quiet of the countryside, then this is definitely a village you probably need to buy a house in. It is absolutely gorgeous here. I mean, it's helped by the weather. It's a beautiful sunny day here in late May. Some really nice French farm buildings, nice orchards. It's just a really nice place to be. And obviously the connection with the history as well makes this place that much more interesting to someone like me, and hopefully you guys watching it too. But the photo we're going to go and have a look for now is one of a knocked out panther, and it looks in a pretty sorry state. I don't know whether it was hit by artillery. Chances are it were. Obviously 2nd Tactical Air Force and the 9th Army Air Corps, 9th Army Air Force were operating a lot in this area, but the whole thing of the rocket firing Typhoons being tank busters, whilst true to a degree, it's a bit more of a myth than I think we like to believe. Right, so I'll show you the photo now. There was actually 2 panthers in this image. Now, I don't know whether they were knocked out on the road by artillery, Typhoons, or whether they just broke down and the crews abandoned them, and then they've been pushed over onto the side of the ditch. And there is quite an old ditch that runs along the side of the road by the looks of it, probably because you've got the Dives River running gently behind us as we just saw. It's probably an overflow, I would guess. Well, I'll show you the photo. So there you can see one tank on its side completely, and then the other one is kind of tilted at 45 degrees. And what looks like is resting on the side of the tank that is tipped over on its side is a German truck, and we can see their distinctive camouflage scheme on it. If I pull the image away, that is the location today, and this is that ditch that I mentioned that runs down here. I don't know whether it's a drainage ditch or whether or quite what it is, but it looks like it runs down there and then runs down the other side of the church as well. But it's definitely this building. We can see there's that big archway, big stone archway going over the building just to the right of the turret of the tank that's canted at 45 degrees, and we can see that in the image today on the house. It's still there, still a really distinctive feature of what looks like a gorgeous French farmhouse. So yeah, some great imagery there. So another really cool aspect of this part of Normandy, they've got information boards up everywhere, and you've probably seen some at the ford at Moissy. But just as I was walking up past the church to try and find another location, there is an information board here, and one of the photographers, or the photographer that was in this area at the time, took another photo of the panther that was in the ditch just over there. But you can see it's filmed, or sorry, see the image has been taken from the front, which is really cool because it presents a completely different angle. And then you can see the other tank next to it as well. And then there's what looks like more armour as well down in the lower right hand corner of it. And the burned out building that you can see from that image is the one that is, well, it's around these around this corner where that massive tree is, which we can't actually see. But it's just one of the things that makes me really enjoy being in this area. There is so much history, there's so many opportunities for then and nows, and it's also a really beautiful place to just hang out and just spend your time anyway if you like being out in the countryside. And one other thing as well, one other feature that I just noticed just as I was walking back actually, so I wasn't able to, sadly, this was the image I was looking to find, and there was only really the house to go on, and unfortunately wasn't able to locate it. But the bridge that I was standing on, where I showed you the first one with the truck that nosedived into the water, so that's on the other bank there. So there you've got German vehicles, artillery pieces. There's even a bike under here, and then that's the view from the bridge as it stands today, because you can see the house there. It's currently in the, or it's in that photo presently, although a bit hard to see. But there it is. So we'll go and take a quick look at that before we head into the main part of St Lambert-sur-Dives and see some of the other cool then and now photos from this area. All right, folks, and this is it. Now, it's a little hard to see through the trees. Hopefully you can make out the building, but what I will do, so there's the river bank down there, but if we come just around here and get a better angle on it, there it is, folks. There's the house that you could see in the image back on the information board by the church, and you see now the field's like a lovely meadow. Don't know what's happening to that house, but it's definitely one that I would love to be able to get my hands on. That's it. So from here, we're going to go into the main part of St Lambert-sur-Dives, and I think I've got about 5 or 6 more then and nows to show you. First stop I wanted to make, it's not then and now, but it is far more important. This is the memorial to Major David Vivian Curry, VC. Now, he was the only Canadian in the Canadian Armoured Corps to be awarded the Victoria Cross during World War II. What I'm not going to do is try and tell Major Curry's story. It's quite a monumental one, to be fair. I mean, you don't get awarded the Victoria Cross for nothing, and I don't feel I could do the man justice by trying to talk around it now. But just know that there is this wonderful memorial to him here, and I suppose in turn as well his men that he served alongside, and the actions that took place here in August 1944. But there is, fortunately, a great series of photos of him taking the German surrender here. So we'll start to find some of those locations now, I think. Right, so I'm now stood in the location in the first of a series of photos taken by the AFPU guys, as the Army's photographic unit and they accompanied the Canadians and the British Army, so equivalent to the US Signal Corps, and they were lucky enough to be here and document the surrender. So the first image we've got here, the Major is there with his pistol down by his hand. He's got his first field dressing strapped to his helmet, and you can see the Germans there marching up the road in my direction, hands on their head, and they're done. For them, the war is most definitely over. And if we look at the buildings that remain, really quite fortunate here in St Lambert to see the building with the like sort of long horizontal roof, and then just behind the memorial, and then there's a building, it's really hard to point on the camera, but there's a bush behind it, sorry, bush in front of it, and then there's the building itself, and we can see those buildings still very much there. So I'm pretty much stood on the spot that Major Curry VC was stood when he was taking the surrender here in August 1944. Right, what we'll do from this, there is a couple more photos that involve, or at least one that involves Major Curry and then some of his men, and they appear to be under fire in the photo. I'm not too sure. It looks like they're certainly taking cover. So we're just going to walk down here, just past the memorial there, and actually head into the village itself. And you can see that not a lot on that road has changed since 1944. Now, I think that Major Curry and his men are stood on approximately this spot here, and I'll show you the photo. So that's the photo. You can see Major Curry's there on the left hand side of the image, talking to perhaps another officer or maybe a senior NCO. You've got the AFPU sergeant there on the left. He's got his pistol, but you can clearly see his camera. And then the Wehrmacht Major, I think he is. I'm not too sure. I'd have to go back and check my notes, but he's clearly being spoken to by some of Curry's men. But what's really good, we've got a few key identifying points in this image. So we have this building here, and then these buildings here, the one with the big blown out roof. But fortunately, when they rebuilt it in the same, exactly the same style. So we can clearly see that is this location today. Right, so walking down from the two photos where you can clearly see Major Curry, and this is the last one. And remember I said I think you can see some of his men appear to be under fire, I think. Well, that was taken just here. So you can see that's the house on the right hand side, the one just here. It's got that stone wall running here, and we can clearly see that in the image. You've got the German motorbike and sidecar, and then two of his men on another vehicle, as well as, interestingly, either a Willys Jeep or a Ford GPW there, just off to the far right-hand side. And it appears that they're taking cover. I don't know, it's a bit hard to tell. We'll probably never know, but that was taken literally, you know, right here. And it's always incredible, it sends a shiver down my spine to think I'm stood where, you know, where history happened, and be able to actually prove that that's where it was. So hope you enjoy this then and now from St Lambert-sur-Dives. Right, so from this point we'll take a walk down into St Lambert-sur-Dives a bit further, because there's two or three more then and now photos I want to find. Right, so we've come just a little bit further down from the direction of the Canadians' advance there, now to this spot. And here's the then photo. We can see two Shermans there. I think the one on the left is a Sherman Firefly. It looks like it's got the bigger box welded to the back of the turret to accommodate the 17-pounders recoil. It's a bit of a difficult place to get a then and now photo, to be fair, because the traffic's relatively busy. So I'm going to try and do this without getting squished. But you can see there the two houses on the left are these two houses here, and then this one here has like a cutout in the roof as it slopes down, and we can just about see that to the upper right corner of the Sherman's turret. Now the house on the right hand side of the street, if we go further forward, there is, in the original photo, you can see the wall, that's there. But if we look at the structural damage it received during the battle, I think it's fair to say it's been completely remodeled post-war, and they've altered the angle of the roof completely. Fortunately though, the way the Normans build things here, typically for a lot of original buildings, if they are going to redo them, they do them in the original style, which is really nice. So it's not just some gaudy new build, it's in keeping within the rest of the ambience of the area. So what we'll do now, from this point, we will continue further down into the village. Right, just coming to the last location now, here in St Lambert-sur-Dives. And do you remember the firefly we saw in previous Then and Now, or what I believe at least to be a firefly? If it's not, someone knows better, please let me know in the comments. I'm not 100% claiming it is. Right, so that's the photo, and we can see there what I believe to be the same tank, and it's backed into the gap between those two buildings, and the Canadian infantry are advancing forward down the road towards Chambois. And that's the view today. So we can clearly see that building there, that's the gap where the tank was. And then on the left-hand side, or sorry, on the right-hand side of the road, just past the junction on the right-hand side, there's that plain-faced building with the offset window. And we can just about make that out. It's right there. And there's that house. So there it is. We'll just see how deep. So yeah, into a garden there, so the Sherman would have easily fit. So that's my last Then and Nows from St Lambert-sur-Dives. Just got one more stop, and then that will be it for the Falaise Gap. So no story here about Falaise Gap would be complete without coming to see this mighty beast here on the side of the road, just outside the small town of Vimoutiers here in Normandy. Now, if you want to learn more about the history of this tank, that's one of my earliest videos on the channel, so go check it out. But I hope you've enjoyed the Then and Nows from Falaise. I've had a lot of fun tracking them down. It's been really, really cool to visit this area again and actually enjoy seeing the history, seeing how it's changed over the years. So if you haven't already, please hit that thumbs up button. It's really appreciated. And if you haven't, again, subscribe to the channel. I really, really appreciate it. So I will see you all in the next one.